Hey yo, welcome back. Happy Friday. Assalamu alaikum. All praise be to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Today we are going to do a podcast. These are my two brothers here, and we're just going to kind of go for it. I do have some questions written down to just kind of get it going, but that's what we're doing today. It's a little bit different, and sometime in the next few days we will be back with the Islamic videos. But yeah, let's just jump right into it. Jake, I'm going to ask you first. In your mind, what is happiness to you?
I think this is something that's changed a lot over the years. Right now, I think the closest approximation I have is peace in life, and knowing that my family is healthy and safe. I think brings me the most happiness. And part of the reason I say that is, and I'm sure you guys can relate, is anytime you know that you have a family member or friend that is struggling some way in life, that, man, it just eats at you. You know what I mean? It's like really you can't have full peace until that gets resolved, right? That's been, even amplified more with my kids and my wife. Anytime something's going on, I feel that's really when it takes the most from me, right? And I feel like, kind of have to focus all energy onto a resolution to kind of regain that baseline of happiness.
Right.
As I get older, I want to say that like things and places matter less to me, and it's more about the people and everybody just being good. There's a short answer to that.
Yeah, so it becomes less and less about, like I know when we were younger, I felt it very strongly that I wanted to be super financially successful. And obviously there's nothing wrong with that, but I notice as I get older, it's not the primary focus of my life. It is,
right.
As you said, it's the safety and health of your family. It's, not being in any great deal of debt, but not necessarily being some kind of ultra millionaire. It's just about having peace, not having people coming after you for money, so to speak.
Yeah.
You don't want anybody in your family sick or hurting or possibly getting involved in like heavy drugs and things like that,
Yeah.
So, yeah. I agree with that. What do you think, Josh?
Yeah, I think happiness is, in balance. Balancing work, family, being there for the people that need you, being able to push away the people that you don't need around you. And all of that comes with happiness with your family, just kind of being, like your own being, finding serenity. And
yeah.
I find happiness every morning when I wake up. People always ask me, like, how's your day going? I said, I woke up breathing, so I'm blessed. And like when it comes down to it, that's really what it is. Like, I'm blessed to wake up breathing every morning, and it's a good day. Like, you make your day. I truly believe that. Like, everyone has things that come down and, stuff that happens, but it's how you bounce back from it and how you approach it versus, oh, this is the end. This is the worst thing that happened. It's like, well, what did I just learn from this, and how can I resolve this to be happy and have serenity and peace? And I think, like financial freedom, is part of it, but like there's people that don't have money that are truly happy.
Exactly.
So that's what I chase, is like truly just serenity and happiness with peace.
Absolutely. I wanted to go back on something that you said there. So all three of us, when we were younger, we used to get into trouble and do different things that were definitely not good. And all three of us have had to let go of people in our lives that were troublemakers, that ended up going down dark roads with drugs and alcohol and, crime and things of that nature. And all three of us have been in trouble, to some degree, and have gotten close to going down those paths. But fortunately, we were able to make the right decisions at the right time, to make that not happen.
Adapt and overcome your situation.
Exactly, adapt and overcome. Jake, do you, like, when you were growing up, I know you've had to kind of distance yourself from some people. You used to be in a heavy metal band, and you were always more like the clean guy, like you weren't like a heavy drinker or things like that, and that was even noticeable when we were kids. Like, you were different from a lot of the people in that scene, How does that make you feel, like knowing that you had to let go of those people, not because you hate them or you wish them the worst, but because their trajectory was so much different than yours, what your hopes and dreams were, for like peace and happiness with your family? Do you ever feel in your mind like I don't know, like a bit of sorrow that you wish those people could have made the right decisions?
Yeah, 100%. And I think even something that struck me real young. So I hung out with a lot of people that drank and did drugs all the time. I'd say like my primary friend group growing up. That was a big part of it. And I think it kind of happened naturally to an extent. It is like I don't know. I was always a little bit of an outsider to it because I never did really heavily get into drinking or drugs for that matter. I tried some stuff for a little bit, but I just quickly found it wasn't for me. But there was a few things that happened, and I'm not going to detail it, but I started to notice. I got up, so let me back up a little bit. So I dropped out of high school when I was, I'm going to say like 17. It was going into my junior year, and I wasn't doing a whole lot with my life at that time. At the time, I was playing music. I really thought, at the time that might be a thing that I would do. And so I poured some time into that, but at the same time, I also started working. So I started working when I was 15, and I've worked ever since. And so that was already kind of starting to drive in my life a little bit. Like, it just naturally had like some kind of work ethic built in where I felt like that was important, that I do that. And I, didn't really think a lot about why, but then, what I started to notice is, we were partying a lot, and a lot of it was my friends and their family members, and some of the family members were, at the time probably 30 years old, or and at this time I'm still a teenager, and I started to just recognize some things, right? Like, some of them unfortunately were really bad alcoholics. Like, they were deep, and they just weren't able to pull themselves out, right? And they were fun to party with,
right.
But there was also like this element of chaos that I'm very much uncomfortable with in life, because they would get drunk and fight, or they, and we're talking about friends and stuff
Right.
like that, but it's kind of like having a pit bull around, right? Like, there was always this kind of dangerous aspect to it, and it's not that I was scared for me necessarily. It's just like I felt like this isn't the path for me. Like,
Right.
There's no way that I can proceed with this and do what I need to do. And so there was kind of this natural pull away from those people, and a lot of them have gone on to do great things and are doing great now. But there really was just this cutoff point where I was like, this just simply isn't me. Like, I can't do that. So I really started focusing on work for quite a while, and then aside, I wanted to take a few college classes, and I'm not acting like I had everything together. This is just like me kind of roughly trying to figure
Right.
out a path, right?
Yeah.
And so I said, okay, I'm going to go get a GED, and this is just me doing things on my own. I really didn't have anybody pressuring me per se to do it.
Yeah.
So I went and took my GED, and I was like, okay, I got that down, so I can at least take some college classes. And then I went and kind of dorked around at college and didn't do a lot, but I ended up working at the college in IT, and that ended up being kind of my on-ramp into my career, right? So I just kind of backed away from all that, and started going a different direction, and started meeting people that had like more common interests with me. So I just kind of went that route, right? And no hard feelings of people I used to hang out with. I still know a lot of them. I see them from time to time, some of them, and a lot of them are doing great. It's just just a divergent life path, right? And
Right.
figuring out where do you want to be and what do you want to do with your life. So,
yeah, exactly. That's something I always admired about you when we were kids was, our father had a really strong work ethic that we always witnessed. He was always working 12-hour shifts, driving an hour and a half to work, depending on traffic, and even when we were young, that's true. You were always working. You were always the least involved with like any type of drug or alcohol. Like, you always had something a little extra, and I'm glad because, we could see Dad as an example, but then I could see you closer in age to me doing the same thing, and it took me probably 5 years longer than it did you to go down that road, but I always had that, I could witness that and see that was a reality for all of us,
let me tag on to one thing you said there. So watching you guys though, I always thought though, these dudes are having a lot more fun than I am. So that's one part that I like, but let me think of how to articulate this. It was almost like I felt like I didn't fit in properly for that. Like I didn't feel like that. Like I felt like if I was in that crowd, I was fraudulent almost. You know what I mean? Because I wasn't actually into those things necessarily. I liked hanging out with the people and doing all that, but it just, I was always like, man, everybody else is having a lot more fun, but I literally don't know how to do that. Like, like as silly as that sounds, I don't know how to have that like a risk aversion and just like go for it. And,
Right.
And I'm not sure. Yeah, it's just kind of interesting. Like,
Yeah. So yeah, that's interesting because like on the flip side, I would look at you and I would think I'm out here doing all these foolish things and I'm having fun, I guess, but like you're going somewhere and I'm not going somewhere. That was clear as day to me, you know. So there was like a deep depression, and the way that I would get away from that is I would go hang out and drink and smoke weed and like party and do things like that to like, because I didn't know what to do or what I was interested in, you know.
Yeah.
That's basically what happened to me, is around the wrong people thinking I'm having a good time, but I'm wasting time, you know. And after I lost 3 careers for failing drug tests in the oil field, I was kind of like, you know, like these are good paying jobs and I'm a young guy, so like I gotta stop doing this. And it's trying to just like, not to be sporadic, but like up to the point right before we found out Dad was sick, like I was already like off the rails, like ready for, you know, major accident here. And then once he got sick and like passed, I was just like full throttle self-destruct.
Right.
And then I just like, I went to bed crying one night. I was like, why am I doing this to myself? Like, why do I keep doing this to myself? I hate this. Like, and it just snapped. And I think since August 29th of 2015, I've been sober off of drugs, you know, so.
Yeah, it's been let's backtrack with you for a little bit here. So you've always had a strong work ethic, even before I did, and I'm significantly older than you, but you were working harder than me at a younger age, and I noticed that as well, you know. So you've always had that, even you know, with alcohol and drug use, you still showed up to work and, you know, took care of your responsibilities. So
yeah, that's kind of like why I kept doing, you know, with the addiction, is I know, like, was going to work, I was doing everything I had to do, I was paying my bills, so to me it was like, it wasn't a problem.
Yeah.
Because like, to me, I see the people that self-destruct and they lose everything, and it's like I'm keeping everything together, and it's like I don't have a problem. And then, you know, and then I keep telling myself that, knowing I have a problem, and finally I just like broke, you know. It was like, this is the end, I have to stop.
Yeah, and for you, it was probably similar for me, as it started young and it started kind of light, you know, with like smoking marijuana, just drinking alcohol, doing those. You kind of slowly start. It's like that slippery slope, you know. You have a weekend where you have like the greatest time of your life, and in the, you know, whether consciously or subconsciously, you're trying to recreate that memory, you know.
Yeah.
Like you're out with the boys drinking, a pretty girl likes you, you know, those type of things.
Yeah.
So for you, like me, it started fairly young, probably 13, 14, 15, right? Just a little bit of alcohol, you know, a little bit of marijuana, and then it just progressively goes and goes.
Yeah.
Because me and you were wild boys, but you might have been the wildest. You know, you've always been adventurous.
Like, I was definitely the craziest, because like I would go to places and they'd be like, oh, it's Josh Parks, and it's like, I am the party, you know what I mean? Like, because I'm wild, you know, like. I would drink, like, you know, I could drink anyone under the table, a whole handle of Jack plus a 24-pack of Budweiser, and like still standing, like functioning, just absolute animal, you know. And like, I guess people like enjoyed me being like that, like, you know, because they were just like, oh, shotgun beers, you know, and we're just slamming beers and drinking and smoking dope, and it's just like, you know. And then it got into accelerating to harder drugs, and it's like I can drink more and more and more, and it's just like, you know, it got to the point where I was just like, I didn't even feel good anymore. Like, I'd go to bed drunk, wake up drinking just to function, you know?
Yeah. I felt that exact feeling that you were just talking about is you become the life of the party, and that becomes part of your character, and that's kind of what everyone expects from you, you know?
Yeah, you feel pressure.
Yeah, there was someone, I'm not going to identify them, but that I cared about, you know, that I was close to, and when I stopped being that life of the party person, you know, like I noticed that our relationship dwindled. It started first that they came across as like disappointed in me, like, what's wrong with you, like, lighten up, have some fun, have a beer. But similar to you start to have that same feeling of like intense emptiness and darkness, and like, this is going nowhere. I always feel bad. I don't feel healthy, you know. And then with you though, it kept going on into your, like, I guess early to mid 20s.
I got sober when I was 25.
Yeah, when you were 25. And so basically, you've always been the kind of guy where you like changed oil, worked on cars, landscaping, all kinds of things. And, you have like a treasure trove of crazy stories that most people will never experience, like for example, when you were doing the landscaping, were you a teenager or early 20s?
I was 21.
And can you tell us about your finger, about what happened on that day?
So it was like a midday April. I think it was, the time of the incident was 10:36, but leading up to that, I had like a crew that worked with me, and we were just cutting up some small pine trees, way smaller than these, and they were probably 20 feet. We were laying them, and then I needed to tie some rope, and I had to cut it. We didn't have any scissors or a pocket knife, so I'm talking to my two guys, like telling them, hey, this is what we're about to do, and I have this rope laying across the stump, and I'm holding it with my hand, and I'm not really talking. I have the axe, or I'm not really paying attention. I'm just talking, and I just kind of like drop it, and instantly it felt like whenever you hit your finger with a hammer, that feeling,
Like that crushing, like deep pain.
yeah, it was like it, yeah. And then when I pulled the axe up, like my finger like rolled off the stump, like the inch of it or whatever,
And it was completely severed.
yeah. And I was just like, damn, like that just happened. And my two guys were like, whoa, Gordo, ¿qué pasó? Like they start freaking out, and I'm like, hey, chill out. And like I grab the finger and I tuck it in my shirt and I roll it up and I get my finger. And those dudes were awesome, man. They ran out there like pit crew style, dropped our trailer, jumped in the truck. They threw me in. They were like, how do I get to the hospital? And luckily, dude, we were like a quarter mile from the emergency room. I get over there. It's crazy. The lady's like, hey, what's wrong? And I was like, amputee. And she's like, what do you mean? And I was like, I cut my finger off. And she was like, what? And I like pull it out, and my finger like rolls onto the counter. And she's like, we have an amputee. And dude, it was crazy, right? Like, cause I'm like starting to get into shock now that I'm hospital. Like I was like, I have to get to the hospital before like I pass out, because people think like in that scenario, like, oh, I'm just gonna faint. But really, like your adrenaline kicks in so hard, and you're like, at least for me, I was like, okay, this is a serious situation. Calm down, collect yourself, calm these guys down. Like we have to focus, calculate, and move. Like, so that's what we did, and we got there, man. And unfortunately, the way I cut it, they weren't able to sew it back on, and I did 2 surgeries afterwards, so 3 surgeries into my finger. And honestly, it's not that bad. It's bothered me like trying to play the guitar because I didn't have that digit, but I've kind of figured it out. But then I've also had trauma to this finger where I got crushed with a piece of drill pipe, so like that digit doesn't bend anymore. So I just I guess I do like hard work jobs, and I'm not cautious. I'm way more safe now. Like, I realize getting hurts, with the kids. Like having kids, I'm so cautious. Like I admire life much more than I used to. Like I respect it, like I respect danger.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just think that's why like I don't have motorcycles anymore. It's like, it's not worth the risk where we live. It's just too dangerous. And like I notice myself as I get older, like I still love cars, but what I love about them is different. Like I'm not trying to do 8 seconds down the quarter mile anymore. Like I just kind of like, I want to build a hot rod and just kind of drive it around with the kids, and like just looking good around town, putting around.
Yeah.
And if I need to go, I can go, but I don't have to go. I don't have that urge to go fast anymore and 100 miles an hour or whatever. I just kind of lost that. But it like turned my interest more into cars and I think getting sober too, like I was able to not waste all that money on alcohol and drugs, and now I can actually do what I want with the cars instead of just dream about it or circle it in a magazine. Like I'm actually doing it. Like I'm dropping money, it's going to the shop, it's getting pro tuned, like and I find happiness in that too. It makes me proud of myself. Like I've accomplished something. Like my kids are good, I'm good, like I'm able to do this now, and like it's like it kind of makes me tear up, but it makes me proud of myself that I know where I used to be and where I'm sitting today.
Exactly. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean, because I had that same feeling where I think we all share it. It just kind of hit us at different points in our lives. Like I was screwing up bad. Obviously, I'd been arrested for a small amount of marijuana, and that was kind of the changing point. I think I was like 19 or so at the time. And then going in there And I think I was there for maybe like 30 or 36 hours total. It wasn't really that long, but I realized two things. Is I'm not a grown man. I think I am, I'm 19 years old, but I'm in there with guys who are 30, 40, 50 years old, and they don't care about life at all. Like, that's what I'm picking up from them, and I was sitting there laying on the floor, and I had to get, I think it was my socks or toilet paper roll on the concrete, and that was my pillow, and just going through that whole experience, it made me realize, like, this is where I'm going. Like, these are real criminals around me. There's violent people in here, like supreme drug addicts, all that stuff. And so for me, that was a big turning point in my life, and I remember coming home that night. Mom and Dad had picked me up, and obviously, the car ride home, they weren't very happy with me. And then I came home, and Jake, you were there, and one of your friends was over, and I could just feel like the disappointment oozing from you guys. You guys didn't say anything cruel to me or anything, but I could just feel that energy, and I knew you were right, And so, like, for the next 2 days, that's all I could think about was, like, what am I doing with my life? Like, what is the purpose of this, And I started to be afraid that I was never going to be able to figure it out. But, being forced to be on probation for a year, and it was a lot of community service. I'm not sure how much, but that would, no one likes to do that, obviously, because but that whole thing was a huge turning point for me. And then soon after, I went to the military, and then again, you're kind of reborn again, and you realize you're not a man. I've got grown, very physically fit, super aggressive men screaming in my face, for 18 hours a day, 19 hours a day, barely getting any sleep. And so that was what helped my trajectory. I'd still had in the military problems with alcohol probably till I was about 35 or 36 years old, but then I started to figure it out. I had gotten with my wife, and I started to see, like, you can't have a realistically, like, stable life. You certainly can't have a real relationship with God if you're constantly intoxicated, especially with alcohol. It's like it's one of the slow killers, and it just drives you into isolation, basically.
Yeah, because I feel like when I went to jail, that was the beginning of the new beginning.
Yeah.
It was, like when, you're going into court. Jake went with me one time, and it's scary, dude. Like, I get arrested in South Texas, and they booked me, and I'm in there with a guy that just shot his neighbor's dog and was getting ready to shoot the neighbor, and it's like that's not me.
Yeah.
And there's another guy in there for domestic violence and, other stuff, and they're like, what did you get arrested for? And I said, I had some drugs in the car. And they're like, oh, yeah, and started, like, trying to get on me. And I was like, look, dude, I'm not in the mood. I was like, I'm 350 miles from home. I was like, if y'all mess with me, like, I'm throwing hands.
Yeah.
Like, it's going down. Like, I don't want to be in here with you. I promise. And they just kind of, like, backed up, and I just kind of stood my ground. I didn't sleep the whole time I was there. Like, Josh Williams, our, basically our adopted brother, I called him. The officer that arrested me let me call Josh while I was on the way to the jail. The cop was super cool, but I was cool with him. I was like, look, dude, like, he's like, I got a canine right behind me. I was like, look, man, I got some weed in here, and I got a gun, and, or whatever. And he's like, all right, cool, get out of the car. He finds it. He put my gun back in my glove box, didn't charge me for, like, that's a charge on its own, having drugs with a firearm.
Right.
And then I had some Adderall, which is basically like, pharmacy drugs, but I didn't have a prescription. So that was a state jail felony, and that was a big wake up for me. It's like, dude, I'm gonna have a felony charge. Like, I love hunting, I love guns, like, that's something I love. And I was like, and I'm about to lose this because I was being stupid, like, doing drugs. And so that woke me up, and luckily I did 3 years probation, 380 hours of community service, and I feel like probation in those programs, like, because I wanted to change, actually helped me.
Right.
Like, I would open up in there and tell them, like, those people things that, like, I wouldn't tell y'all, like, because that's, like, whatever, like, we're all traumatized. Like, I've seen lots of trauma.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, you see people, you lose people, you see people die in front of you, like, all kinds of stuff. And it's just like, when that starts at a young age, it's just like, it's very traumatizing. And then I kind of lived in fear, like, after Sean passed and Justin Morley and stuff, like, what if that happens to me? What if that happens to y'all, dude? Like, I was, like, terrified, like, and for what, right? Because, like, it sucks that they're both gone, and it was from a bad decision, right? But, like, at the same time, like, it just worried me, and, it's just, I started really thinking about that stuff. Like, how am I going to end up if I don't stop? Like, as soon as I went to jail, And being in that courtroom and that judge telling me like, hey, if you fail a drug test while you're on probation, 10 years, you're going.
Yeah.
Like he was like old school judge, like my Uncle Vinny, like what, no jokes, Jake seen him, like that dude was old school, like to the bone.
And 10 years, that's not a joke.
Dude, that's my life, bro. I'm over, you know? So I'm thankful that, like, I look at that as a blessing, and people are like, you think that being arrested was a blessing? I was like, I honestly think it saved my life.
Yeah. I think so, because I noticed the change in you as well after that had happened, you know, and I was concerned about you as well. I'm sure, you know, Jake and everyone was, but we started to see that change in you, you know, like your wildness kind of started to die down. You're just one of those people, it's just in your DNA to be adventurous and wild and to love adrenaline, you know, and you know, so it's not your fault really, it's just part of who you really are, you know.
Just made a couple bad decisions that, you know, kind of set me back, but I also feel like that's the plan for me. Like, everyone has a plan, and you can fight your plan or you can live your plan. Like,
exactly.
You know, you make your choices, and, you know, choices have consequences, whether they're good or bad, and you just got to live through it, man, and keep pushing. Like, never give up hope that tomorrow will be better.
Exactly.
So that's why when I say I wake up breathing, it's a good day. Like, it's another good day. I'm here. Like, I can change something today that I wasn't happy about yesterday.
Absolutely.
So,
and I would say between the three of us, like all the people that we've known that have died prematurely, you know, not from medical conditions, but from suicide, drugs, alcohol, car accidents, maybe a few others that I'm missing. I mean, between the three of us, just 3 human beings, you know, people that died unnatural deaths, it's probably somewhere in the 30 to 50 range. I'm not really sure.
Yeah, I would say, because, you know, I buried 2 friends last year.
Yeah, and it's and like every time that happens, you know, it's like a wake-up call that like this gift of life is so precious, and it's so easy for it to just go away in a heartbeat. You know, it really is.
It's easy to not understand that when you're young.
Yeah,
it's so easy.
You know, it's really easy to just like look past that. I mean, the kind of the cliche that, you know, you feel invincible, but it's kind of true to an extent, because you can't envision a scenario where like you're not here tomorrow. You know what I mean? Like you can't even conceive of that. I couldn't anyway. And you know, of course that comes on harder, you know, as you get older. But yeah, that's interesting. And one thing about Josh is, like, I really didn't know the extent of what was going on with Josh at the time, because I'm a little older than these guys.
Well,
and
I hid it very well from everyone.
Well, not only that, but like I had already like moved out, like, you know what I mean? So like I wasn't around still when a lot of that was going on, or I wasn't as close, you know what I'm saying? Like I was, you know, young man trying to get my feet under me, and like I really didn't know the extent. Like, I mean, I knew you guys were partying and all that, but a lot of times I didn't know just like how far it had gone, you know what I mean?
Yeah, because it's one of those things too, and I think me and Josh both felt it internally, because at some point there's like a shame, like, you know, because I know, you know, if my brother Jake, if he knows I'm doing this and this, I know he's going to give me that look, or just kind of be like, oh, like, why are you doing this, you know? And I think that was a positive thing, because when you have someone that close to you that you respect, that is not afraid to be disappointed in you to your face, it's beneficial, because you feel that wrong, even though you're trying to hide it. You're like, oh, he's right, you know?
I felt that hurt with Jake. Like, I hurt more than he hurt. Like, when I had my heart attack, and they were like asking me like, hey, this is very important, don't lie to us, like, what are all the drugs you have done? And like, you know, it basically turned into a laundry list, and he's like tearing up, and like, dude, I just feel like a terrible human being at this point. It's like, dude, what am I telling these people? Like, am I serious? Like, am I telling that really is me? And I had already been like 8 months sober at this point, which is crazy. I got sober and then had a heart attack from the effects of 7.5 years of drugs and alcohol.
Yeah.
And it finally caught up to me, and it's just like seeing how hurt he was from me telling him that. It's like, I'm never doing that again, dude. Never. Like, I feel like I'm a disappointment right now. Like, I'm better than that.
Yeah, I felt those feelings too, and I think you've had more injuries and near-death experiences than I think anyone I've ever met before, that I know personally, you know. And so, but, you know, for all the bad that comes from that, you also have gained a great deal of wisdom. You know, the person that you were 10, 15 years ago is not the person that you are today, you know. And that's the natural order of things, you know, as we're on this earth, is to learn from those mistakes, or we perish from them, you know, and to pass that wisdom on to a younger generation. We were talking about that on the drive over. over here is mentoring, our children or people at work or just younger people that we know, a nephew, it doesn't matter, is when we see those opportunities, is to mentor them. Because when we were growing up, it's not that elder males in our family didn't offer mentorship per se. It's just from a cultural standpoint, the timing of it, it was still a bit more in the kind of the cowboy phase, especially since we live in Texas, to not get like overly emotional, like if you're talking to a male child, or it's more straightforward. It's like, a spank on the butt and like, don't do that again, instead of like an explanation of why not to. So that's one of the things about sharing your feelings, that still to this day men kind of cringe when they hear that, but involving more information on why not to do something, and a little bit less scolding. I think that for a lot of people that can have a greater effect. You know what I mean?
What do they call that? What kind of criticism is that?
Constructive
criticism. I find that I love to be criticized because I know I'm not the best. And I try to be open to new ideas and not think that because it's my idea it's the best, because I feel like that slows me down, like especially in our line of work, right? Like because a lot of times we have to think on the fly, like our tool's not working, and people panic under pressure, right? And I feel like that's my stronghold, is like under pressure, like that's my time to shine. And it's just I forgot where I was going with that, but
well, I can add on to that is you're absolutely right. Because of all the crazy stuff you've done and that you've been through and that you survived, the way that you view an intensely stressful situation, it's not the same as someone whose life has just been even. Like maybe they've experienced some pain and some disappointments, but not on your level. You know what I mean? And so when something is catastrophic to you, your perspective is different.
And that's how I always try and look at things now, is from perspective and not my perception. And I feel like that like really opens me up and doesn't hold me back. Is I'm so open-minded now. I like to sound crazy, but like like I believe in dragons and Bigfoot. Like I believe in the possibility that existed, because like we sit in this park, right, and like where did that metal come from that's forged from the ground, right? And these trees, and these are small pine trees for East Texas, and it's like you go out in the desert and you see those big plateaus that look like petrified stumps, and it's like we really don't know much about life other than what we know very little, and what has been. And is what to come, we know nothing really, just guesses. So I feel like I stopped taking life so serious in some aspects, as far as like trying to believe what they push, and try to be more open-minded and explore more, like just in different aspects, instead of shutting myself down from I just believe that this happens one way, and looking into other ways and seeing it's just like it's like everything in life. Everyone can look at things a certain way and hold themselves back, and if they're open to someone else's interpretation, and great things might happen. So
absolutely, I totally agree with that. And I wanted to I don't know how much more daylight we have here, but Jake, I want to start with you on this one. The culture of today versus when we were kids, and to make that a little easier to go into, is I want to start like for example, like there's a lot of young ladies that are doing the OnlyFans, where they're obviously doing sexually inappropriate things on camera for money, and it's become so popular now that it's almost to the point like, yes, us, especially as parents, we see the extreme harm in that, but among those age groups, they feel no shame or anything of that nature.
It's like a norm now.
It's so normal that it's not even discussed or criticized. I mean, obviously us, within our family and close friends, we're going to have something to say about it. But outside of that, it's like no one even cares anymore, And we grew up in Texas, and just Texas culture was a bit more about like manners, opening doors for people and things like that,
And your body's sacred. Like you don't show it to someone that it doesn't need to be shown to. It's just kind of like that's for your significant other only.
Exactly.
It's no adultery and all of that. And now that's like common. Like you see the interviews on Facebook, and it's like, how many times have you cheated? And they're like, they're proud of it. And it's like, for what? Like you're not to be trusted.
Yeah.
Like that's not a good thing. Like loyalty is the most important thing.
I know. And you, Jake, you actually had to move. You had moved somewhere in Texas to a great location, a beautiful neighborhood. And that was kind of your dream. You had bought a boat out there and everything was going well. And then we don't necessarily need to get into specifics of the government and all that on what exactly happened. But if you can go into that about, from how your neighborhood was to how it became after that, and then what you did about it afterwards.
Yeah. I think the short version of that is that a lot of people moved in that didn't share a culture. I mean, I think it's probably the easiest way to say it. And there was a lot of folks that were doing bad things. I mean, we went from, what I thought, well, so it was an interesting time too. So we moved in like right at the beginning of when the whole COVID fiasco started, right? So it was like when we first moved there, it was very quiet, right? Because I mean, people weren't going out that much, I mean, it was like peak COVID. Like we literally moved in like right when all that was starting. Okay?
And when you first moved in, there was a shared state of mind basically within your neighborhood, within your community, like a common goal.
Yeah. I mean, it was typical neighborhood, safe, nice sidewalks. You know what I mean? Just like a good place.
Kind of reminded me of like the Wonder Years, but like with beach houses.
Yeah, I mean, it was a place that I felt really good about raising my kids. Because I mean, that's ultimately what I was looking for: somewhere safe for my kids, somewhere where they could participate in things and have a really good time. And in a safe way, right? And it's just things started to change, right? I mean, you had people coming in where there was a lot of violence. There was a kid that got stabbed at the basketball court.
And when we say kid, we're talking like early teenage years, right? Somewhere around
I want to say the kid that got stabbed was like around 10 years old or something like that, like really young. Yeah, like at a basketball court, he got stabbed. So that was like the first thing where I was like, man, what's going on here? You know what I mean? And then there was other things that started to happen. So my son at the time was pretty young in elementary school, and so this is right when people started going back to school because of the COVID stuff, right? Well, once he got back into school, we're talking, these kids at the time were 7, 8, something like that, but they were there was like fights in the classroom, like when we were in high school type of fights, you know what I mean? Like kids like slamming heads on desks. I mean, violent fights. There was stuff like that. And then at their school too, there was a playground there, and some kids over there, they lit the thing on fire. And when I say lit on fire, it was like it's something out of a movie, like just completely engulfed, like 20-foot flames, just
I'm sure
it was just insane. And then we had people, it was just like all of the destruction started to like add up. Like there was kids coming through, like vandalism, breaking into cars, kicking down people's fences. It was just all these things were starting to accumulate. And I guess to answer your question, what I do with it is my wife and we talked about it and sold our house almost immediately. And then I guess as a mixed blessing with what was going on in the neighborhood, and we were able to sell the house very quickly. And so then we packed up, and she and I are both fortunate that we are at the time working fully remote, so we had a lot of options on where we could go. So we moved out here to East Texas, and complete opposite of any type of place I've ever lived. Because I've always lived in a suburb of a big city, always. And so now we live kind of out in the woods, where things are a lot quieter. I mean, small towns come with their own things, but it's a different vibe, and I feel like it's thus far has been real good for the kids. That's where I make most of my decisions, is like what's going to be good for them, right? So
would you say outside, obviously the internet is always going to be a problem to some degree. I mean, you can do parental locks and all those types of things to help protect them from things they don't need to see on the internet. But outside of that, your new location here, it's a lot easier to manage that peace and safety, right, and the prosperity for your children, would you say?
I think so. Yeah. For right now, I would say I feel like it was the right move. We've got a good thing going, and I want to circle back to something you mentioned earlier about, just like culture with like OnlyFans and all those things like that. That's a topic that's real close to my heart because I have a young daughter.
Right.
And thus far, and I guess time's going to tell, the strategy that I take today, and this is with both my kids on everything, is I try to very much explain the negative results of any given decision, and part of my personality is like I don't know, this might be one of the things that's kind of a blessing too, is that I've never fit in a lot of ways with that kind of stuff. I you know what I mean? And so it's very easy for me to say that is insane, and this is why this is insane.
Yeah.
Like I want to make sure that they fully understand, because like to me it is still so important, like that children understand, like, to value themselves. Not only that, but just because other people are doing stuff, you don't have to do that. You know what I mean? And that's how you become a 1%er. You know, I'm going to go on a little tangent here, because I have some thoughts about this, because you know, I think all of us have talked about this before. I'm going to take it back to kind of like work. Okay, I firmly believe that if you go and you get a job and you just do what you're supposed to do, you're going to be in the top 10% of all employees in the United States.
Agreed. That's
like if you just show up on time, do what you're supposed to do, you're already in the top 10%. Mm-hmm. You start going above, you're doing two things. Not only are you're getting way closer to that top 1%, and this doesn't matter what you do. I don't care if you're flipping burgers, whatever. If you show up on time, you respect yourself, you do what you're supposed to do, good things are going to come. Like, you take care of business, you handle things, and you're going to excel, because it's so easy to do more than what most people are doing. And that sounds so silly, but I try to really tell my kids that. I've explained this to both of them. They're still young, don't work yet, but I'm like, if you just do what you're supposed to do, you don't worry about what anybody else is doing. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't matter. If you want to be in that top 1%, it's not even that hard. You just got to go and do what you're supposed to do. And I'm jumping a little bit, but you know, I still think it's very important for like to have like, I'm very big still on monogamous relationships, you know what I mean? And I hope that, you know, my wife and I's relationship is providing a good example for them, because like I very much fear that my daughter could get involved in some OnlyFans, you know, just some nonsense. But I want her to have so much respect for herself that that's not even an option, you know what I mean? And I don't know exactly how to do that. And you know, the only thing I know to do is try to explain things in a way that makes sense, you know what I mean? Because like I'm a very future looking person. Mm-hmm. Like you know, I think I almost at like the penalty of like I'm not in the now a lot, because I'm always thinking like, what if I do this, what does this mean steps ahead? And I think about that for all my family, and like I try to at least share some of that, right? Because I, you know, kind of circling way back to the kind of beginning of our conversation, is like I said, I've never really fit in with like kind of the wilder stuff, because I've been so risk adverse. Like that's just kind of my personality. Right. But you know, it's like I don't want you to not have fun, but like I really want you to think about like what this means, and not just about right now. Like what can happen later. But you know, last thing you want to do is like change the course of your life because of one stupid decision. You know,
that's
what I mean?
all it takes is one.
Yeah, and you know, and I see this stuff, so I'm on like X and stuff all the time. Like that's kind of my social media of choice, right? So I see a lot of the culture talk about OnlyFans and things like that, and it's just to me, just devastating to people. Like it's so sad to me. It's just like it's a world that I can't even comprehend.
It really is sad too, because when we think about like with a female especially, is if she gets involved in that kind of content online, the OnlyFans, then she's created a negative, you know, legacy for herself for the rest of her life. You know, as people say, the internet is forever. So if when a young lady is doing those things, it's gonna follow her. She can run from it. She can delete social media. She can change her name, and perhaps over time she can get away from it. But I doubt that most people do that. You know what I mean? And so that becomes a part of your legacy as a human being. Yeah. And it's like it's hurtful. And I think that go ahead.
I was gonna say another culture change from when we were kids, it's different, is everything's recorded.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like everybody records, like there's video of everything.
You hear about videoed here,
right? Yeah. There's video of everything. And you know, we've all done dumb things, and the last thing you want is that on video on the internet. You know what I mean? Like
it influences kids too, because they see it, and then they're like, oh well, these kids are doing that. Like kind of like how we saw like CKY videos, like y'all were basically doing that like before they were, like at the mall with the video camera and like Mortal Kombat. You know what I mean? Like as soon as like those little handhelds, like we were making skateboard videos and BMX videos and stuff. And now, like, you know, back then we were like doing like funny stuff, but now it's like violent fights are being put all over the internet for our kids to see, and like children cussing and
drug use in videos is rampant. And
drug use in videos is crazy. And then like you think it's like a kid's like video game like thing, like, you know, my oldest son, he watches I can't say streamers on here, right? Like they're
yeah, you go ahead. No.
Okay, so he's Zebra Gamer, super kid friendly. Like, we watch some of it, and he's like super good for kids interaction with like Mario and stuff. And then like you know, Jonas, or sorry, yeah, he'll go and he'll watch something on like kids YouTube, and it should be safe, right? And then like you hear him dropping like an F-bomb gets dropped, but it's dragged real long. And it's like, whoa, dude. And like the stuff they're saying isn't necessarily appropriate for a child. Like,
yeah, and we've seen evidence in that in a lot of the Disney movies as well.
Yeah.
Like you see the sexual innuendos, or in what's it, SpongeBob SquarePants, the cartoon. You see things like that.
Oh, it's in all kinds of them. Yeah.
Yeah, and I never really liked that kind of stuff or watched it, but I've seen clips of it. I have a child now. You know, she's grown now, but I started to see that, and I was like, I can't believe they're putting this on there and nobody's saying anything, because that is going to develop part of their personality and sense of humor as they start to figure that out. You know, kids talk, they figure things out, what they mean and so forth, and there's like an age of innocence that needs to be preserved, you know, like.
Yeah, I feel like innocence has been lost so early. Like, we're innocent maybe for someone that's 13, 14 before they start getting exposed to, now it's like parents think it's like their kid is their friend, instead of like parenting them, they're like hanging out with them, and it's like, oh, okay, well, you're 16, yeah, let's go get some drinks and smoke a joint or whatever. And it's like, really, you're just bad influencing them. And it's like, if you want to do that, don't do that in front of them. Like, you know what I mean? Like, send them to grandma's and go have a girls' night, boys' night, whatever. Don't expose them to that. Like, don't make that part of your routine with them. And that seems to be a lot common, like how cultures change too, whereas like our parents we were pretty strict, you know, for the most part. Some slack, but it was pretty strict household, you know, it was a tight ship. And households nowadays, it's like, you know, marriages don't stick. There's infidelity everywhere. The OnlyFans, like the culture change. Like no one, you know, people date on the internet and don't see each other in person. And it's like, it's almost like the internet is like a disease, and it like poisons everyone.
Well, that's influencers. That's a interesting one. So just that term in and of itself.
Yeah, what are you influencing?
Right. Yeah, because you know, my kids will watch stuff like on YouTube, so we've held off. Like, so my kids currently aren't allowed on social media, any of that, because they're not ready for it, right?
Yeah.
But even still, like, you know, they watch YouTube, and now they've got Reels and all this. But a lot of these influencers are creating a world that is just absurd.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
Well, you know, when you have let's take Mr. Beast. I won't get into everything that goes on with that guy, but for example, you know, he's done some really great things, right? Like giving money and things like that. But then what happens though is the kids will see big numbers roll by, hundreds of thousands. You know, we're going to give this person $25,000, give this person $100,000, $1 million, or whatever, and they have no clue what $1 million means. You know what I mean? And or they have like just all these things. Oh, we're going to give away a Ferrari, or you know, whatever it is. And what's happening, and I've seen this in real life, is the kids don't understand that that's not normal. Like that's not even close to normal. Like they don't understand that, you know, the bigger picture. Oh yeah, this guy's on YouTube making tremendous ad money, takes that money, then pours it back into these videos, and it just it's gotten bigger and bigger. But it's creating this vision for the kids that like, this is normal, that you're going to have $25,000, and you know, oh, that's not a big deal, you just throw that, you know, let some people put some groceries in a circle and we're going to give them $100,000, you know what I mean? Like
I deal with that with my youngest. Like he watches like those kids on YouTube Kids or whatever, and like all the toys they have, and and their parents are like, oh, let's run to the store and get this or whatever and do like a review, and I'm like, dude, you don't understand, they're like sponsored by these toy companies and stuff, and they have big revenue from these videos. And I was like, you know, like I'm a blue collar dad, and your mom's like an accountant, and like we do well, but you have to understand also that we can't just pour money into that. Like we have to invest in your future. Or like there's other things where like if you want to go on vacation, but they just see all of that. Like that's what kids see now. Like I know when we were kids, like we went to Big Bend, like, you know, that was probably like, you know, a cheap vacation for mom and dad for like compared to Disneyland or something, but it was cool. Like that was a super cool. Like I don't regret any of our vacations as kids, and I realize now that like that was like the cheaper of the spectrum, but like what we got to see and stuff, like caves and like, you know, those big road trips, like you know, yeah, like my parents didn't fly me to Disneyland, but I got to see most of the country as a kid, and that's like way cooler in my opinion. Like,
Yeah.
those memories there, and now kids just expect, like, you know, my kids like, oh, we need to go on Disney cruise, we need this, and it's like, dude, it's not how life really works, brother. Like, we talk about work ethic, and kids don't have that. I see that with a young kid that works with me now. Is the kids don't understand, if you want something, you have to work hard for it, and that's the only way you'll truly appreciate it.
Well,
That's the truth.
My son said something to my wife. This has just been a few weeks ago that really struck me. So, whole different story. But I'm pretty big on budgeting. Like I'm like a numbers guy, right? So I'm real big on budgeting as part of what we do, right? And my son was asking my wife for something. I don't even remember what it was. And she said, "Well, that's not in the budget to do that." He's like, and he was like offended that she said the word budget. He said something like, he's like, budget. He's like, that sounds like we're poor, or we don't have anything, or whatever. So I sat him down like a little later because she told me about it. I was like, hey, let me explain what this means. It doesn't mean that there's no money. What it means is that it's not allocated for that. You know what I mean? Like, and it would be wise for you to start to understand that, you know, just because something exists just because you can doesn't mean you should, right?
Yeah. I'm trying to work on that now with them. Is like, just because, like, you know, because I'll be like, oh, I'll tell them the same thing. That's not in the budget or whatever, because we budget now.
Yeah.
And which has given us a lot, like the stairway to financial freedom.
Yeah.
Like, we get closer every day, and that's what I mean. When I wake up, it's a good day. I'm one day closer to debt free, you know what I mean? And one day closer to retirement. Yeah, one day like closer to my car being paid off. You know, it's just one day closer to something great. So, but yeah, I'm always on them about that and telling them, like, you know, like, it's not in the budget. Like, this is how money works. Like, trying to explain to them young, because I felt like we didn't really get that. I didn't really understand how money worked and how to budget. And, you know, Dad's like, oh, I'll have $300 in the bank account. And that might have been sufficient in the 90s and the 80s, but like now, like $300, dude, you can't even go get a tire, you know? You barely buy a car battery.
Right.
So it's like, you know, I try to keep, you know, a good amount of money in there for an emergency. Like, oh, like kids took my contacts and opened all of them up and put water paint in there, you know? I need to spend $300 on contacts. Like, no big deal. Like, and I feel like that brings me happiness, like, to go back on where we were, but like, and not to get off subject with where, like, you know, culture changed, but like, I'm trying to kind of raise my kids like how we were raised, like discipline, respect. And I know it's like a big thing to say yes ma'am, no ma'am, like that's not a thing anymore, but I make them do it. Like, I make them call me sir, I call them sir. And you know, I think a lot of that work has to be with working in the oil field too. It's like, when you talk to someone, you have to be professional and you have to be well spoken and say it with your chest. And the young generation now, they're like, oh, dude, yeah, that's Yaz, bro, or whatever, like the term is. Oh, they're throwing shades. And it's like, I don't know what that means, man. Like, what does that mean, throwing shade? Like, who's got umbrellas? Like, what's up? Like,
Right.
and it's just like so I'm trying to like raise our kids like as an 80s 90s baby, and like, just tell them it's okay to not be a bad kid. It's okay to be a good person. It's okay to be nice to people. Like, be nice to people and life will bring you happiness. Because I've noticed that, like, I used to be not so nice to a lot of people, and it's just because I was unhappy. And now that I find myself being happy, it's a lot easier just to say, like, hey, how are you doing? And they're like, oh, well, whatever. And it's like, hey, you know what? Your day's going to get better. I guarantee it, you know, and just keep walking. And sometimes that's just what people need. But this generation they don't interact in person. It's all online or on the phone, and it's like cyberbullying. And it's like, you know, like, you need to bring it back to, like, if you're going to bully someone, take it to the park and fight it out. Like, you know, it's over afterwards or whatever. Talk it out, fight it out, whatever it is. And that doesn't happen. It's just like one person says something and then everyone automatically believes it. There's no truth in it. And then it like crushes this other person. And like, kids are mean now compared to how we were. They're evil.
Yeah.
It's like back then, like, you know, if girls were arguing, they'd slap and pull hair or whatever. Boys would fight, and then it was over. You could shake hands, get up, you know, go get a root beer or whatever, and it was over. And nowadays, like, kids are so violent, like throwing stuff at each other, cutting them, shooting them, and it's like, whoa, 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 whoa. It's like, it's like whenever I hear these news stories, it reminds me of that movie Friday where Craig's dad's like, so sissy, gotta pick up a gun, too scared to get your butt whooped, you know?
Yeah, that is one thing. You know, obviously at my age now, I'm against unsanctioned fist fighting outside, you know, but with that said, with a lot of young men, that culture, especially in very rough and often economically poor societies, that is a significantly better option, is to square up, duke it out, beat each other up, and then shake hands and be done with it, instead of stabbing each other, shooting each other, drive-by shootings, and it's not even exclusive to those communities necessarily anymore. It's just the young culture. And we see all the videos on the internet of just violence from all different cultures, not only the United States but worldwide, of people who are in that teenage age group, early 20s, and then it's so prevalent that people think that it's normal, and then they want to emulate that behavior and try to become a legend.
Well, what's crazy is people will do stuff like, going back to social media, like people will create that for content.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like, knock a dude out, dude, where he's like twitching and like that thing's
like that's cool. It's not, dude. Like,
and that video's up somewhere and has 400,000 likes, right? And then that incentivizes just horrific.
Like, I'm gonna do that too. And it's like, like, I know what you're talking about, because people will just be walking down the street and just like randomly knock somebody out, and it's like, dude, that's not cool. Like, the kids don't realize this, but like, you can kill somebody just punching them. Like, and like, people are like, oh, that's not true. But like, if you punch somebody behind the ear and they're knocked out, and then they slam their head on the concrete and then they get a brain bleed, and you just leave them there, it's over for them, dude. They got like 30 minutes, and it's like, fighting is dangerous, it's, and it's gotten even more dangerous with like, now it's knives and guns versus like, just like everyone's standing around. As soon as the person falls, it's over, shake hands, whatever. You can be mad, get over it later or whatever, but like, end it now. Instead of now, it's like kids will like, they do the cyberbullying, and they're like group attacks on people and the private messages, so like it's not seen, and I like, kids, the suicide rate for children is so high, and it's that's why, man, like, this generation like needs to get off the internet and just like go outside and play. Like, my kids, they play outside. There's some kids that play outside, but a lot of kids on the street never come outside. And it's like, man, you're like missing out on the best parts of childhood, like scraping your knees, riding your bike, hanging out with friends, like watching The Sandlot. Like, dude, that was like what I was trying to do every summer, was like live that life, like Sandlot. Like, the boys are together. We're not playing baseball, but we're building dirt jumps for our bikes in the woods, and like hanging out. And hot days we go to the pool, and like,
yeah, that was a significant part of all three of our youth. We were fortunate enough to have like a large section of woods near our house.
Man.
And I mean, we played Nintendo, like the regular Nintendo and Super Nintendo. That was around our era, and that was fun. But it wasn't like it is today, where you're online and everything. So you get tired of playing Street Fighter or whatever, you got to go out in the woods and build forts and talk on walkie-talkies and wrestle around or ride go-karts or motorcycles. And I wouldn't trade that for anything.
Dude, that was like I look back at that, and that's like a great childhood. Like, we're out there in the woods, like we got little fires, cooking little cans of chili and ramen noodles, and like, we're like 8, and like, I'm like full up like survival. Like, so when I watch those survival shows, I'm like, dude, I was doing that when I was 8, but with a pocket knife and a can of chili, what I mean? Like, I can knock these out. And and I think that may have been part of my love too for like hunting and being outdoors, is from growing up in the woods like that. And mom and dad not really caring. They know we're pretty safe. I mean, we had wild boars out there, but they really stayed clear of us. And you could really just go 10 feet in the woods, and next thing you know, you're building a teepee and a little campfire, and like no one batted an eye. But if you see kids go in the woods nowadays, it's like, what are they up to?
There's no telling. Something probably bad in most cases.
But the culture change, I think about like, Christmas, I was playing the record player, right? Like, that wasn't even that uncommon. We had one when we were kids, and music's changed so much. And I think that's part of the culture change, is like we were talking about it on the way here. The country's not country anymore. There's no rock and roll, like heavy metal, there's far and few coming out, and everything's just kind of like pop. Not good.
It's kind of all blended, not completely, but kind of blended like, into one type of like pop music.
Yeah, it's just like one genre. It's like, it's boring, and like a lot of it, like the rap, it just reminds me of like a small block Chevy that won't start. It's just like, and it's like there's no like rhythm and flow. And it's like, I go back and I listen to like Run DMC, My Adidas, and it's like, man, like, you feel it, like, like you feel like you're there with them, like they make you feel part of the song. And it's like, music doesn't really have that effect on me anymore. And so I find myself listening to old music. Like, you know, you feel, like when you can feel what they're doing, it makes it so much more enjoyable.
Right, and there's something about that said for older music, or something that's to be said about it, is that statistically speaking, it was significantly more moral in the things that they would speak about. You know? A lot more class. You know, a lot less alluding to immoral things. You know, so that was definitely different. One thing I wanted to touch on before we move on, I know it's starting to get dark out here, is what we were talking about is. The bullying on social media and things like that, is people don't think about it, but the psychological impacts of that. So for example, if a teenager, someone sneaks up on them and punches them in the head and knocks them out, and like you said, there's like 400,000 likes on that video, what are the psychological, you know, ramifications? What does it do to that person for the rest of their life? Because now 50 million people have seen them be knocked out on camera, and they see people dancing around making fun of them, and there's thousands and thousands of comments of saying how funny it was. You know, they think about the intensity of that.
Yeah, I think that's, you know, part of the reason that suicide is so high is because of things like that. Like, because that person has to live with that for the rest of their life. People are going to recognize them like, oh, you're that dude that got knocked out, bro. Yeah. And like you say, like that's a mental toll.
Yeah.
And like, you know, for a man, like I feel like men have a tough life that people don't understand. Like we have it, we're wired away like we are a provider. Like we're just wired that, like at least us, like my goal when I wake up is to provide the best life possible for my family, and I come last.
Exactly.
Like,
I could not agree more.
Like, you know, I make sure everyone has what they need before even when I make dinner, I make everyone's plate and I make mine last. And I know like the old school way was like the parents ate first and then the kids, but no, I want happiness. So I feed my kids first and then my wife and then me. And then, you know, and that brings peace. And I just, I'm trying to teach my kids like that, you know, like the importance of just being a good person, man, a stand-up person, a quality member of community, and not to be a bully. Like there's some kids in the neighborhood right now that are bad influence, and I told them, hey, don't hang out with those kids, they're a bad influence. I can see from your behavior adjustment being around them has influenced you in a bad way, and it's not cool to be like that, like ding dong ditching people and stuff. And we have Ring cameras, so I just told the kid, I was like, dude, I got cameras, like stop doing it.
But you know, it kind of jumped from there. Like I turned into, I was a bully at one point when I was a kid, but it was all like insecurity stuff.
Yeah,
you know?
I was too, but you know, I wasn't a cyber bully.
No, yeah.
I was angry as a kid. I think we all were.
Yeah, it's weird because like it was a direct result of being bullied, right?
Yeah.
So like to kind of quickly paint the picture, so was homeschooled for a good portion of my elementary years, and then I went back to school, public school in 5th grade. And dude, the kids were relentless. Like I went in there just like as naive as a person could possibly be. And dude, they were like made fun of my clothes and like, cause we were in kind of like, you know, middle class-ish area, you know, and where I ended up going to school was like this very affluent area. And dude, the kids were ruthless, man. And it ended up making me mean. It ended up like, got my first fight because of this same stuff. And then like I'm still working on that today, you know what I'm saying? Like not being that person that it turned me into, you know what I mean? Like because I was real mean for a while, and it was but it was pure insecurity. It was like everybody like, you know, not liking me and like very few friends and all that kind of stuff, you know.
Yeah,
and
that's how I became, like, because I had those same insecurities, like, you know, like being felt like people like, oh, you're fat or whatever, you know, you're this, you're poor, white trash.
Yeah.
And like eventually, like, you know, like it gets to you, right? Like you try and fight it, and I found like I found peace with it now. Like I'm able to do it at work, like when I go out to the rigs, like because like men just drag men out there, like it's a, you know, who can talk the best, you know, and they're evil, like, and yeah, like I am engaged with them if they can handle it, but I'm like, if you can't handle it, like, and you start getting mad, just stop, like. And
what you're basically alluding to is joking around and maybe being a bit rough joking around, but like, it's kind of the culture in the oil
and
field.
It's the oil field, like people have been watching Landman, and that's, some of that's true and some of it's not. So it's definitely theater, but it's like, you know, it is rough out there, and like, you know, like there is like, you know, like grab ass or whatever, like, you know, gay jokes or whatever, but like there's like stuff where you say something like you're trying to hurt their feelings, right, to get the reaction. And it's insane, man, because like some people, like, you know, they'll start doing it, chirping off and stuff, and then you say something to them and it like gets under their skin, and then they want to fight you, and it's like, well, bro, like, I'm not taking none of this serious. Like, I thought we were just joking around. And men are just so like wound up, you know. It's part of being a man, like.
And we can see that going all the way back to the Spartans. There's historical evidence that they would often they joke on each other because it I guess to a degree is a sign of intelligence to be like quick-witted, to come with a quick comeback, but also to help just build that mental fortitude. Like, they're making fun of whatever your shortcomings are, but you learn to deal with it as you age, you know. And you got me a job in the oil field for a short time, I think maybe a month at most, and I recognized that culture as well. And it was hard for me to fit in because like, I've always been a little more
fresh out of the military too, more professionalism and and structure, whereas out there it's kind of like you got a bunch of idiots.
Yeah, and I've always just kind of been a little bit more serious. Like, I'm not one to start making fun of people. That wasn't always true when I was younger. Like we shared, you know, I had some of the same insecurities because I was being bullied at school for the same reasons. But I did notice that out there, that is the culture. But because I wasn't used to it, I didn't know if they didn't want me there or if they were. I started to figure it out after about 2 weeks.
Like,
you know,
testing you, seeing what you are.
Yeah. So, and then, like, you know, and then I could see that's just how everybody talks to each other. And I was like, okay, this is just a different culture, you know. But for me, I was like, this is annoying. Like, I don't really communicate like this. But then I saw what it was, and it was like, okay, it's whatever.
Yeah, because like, that's kind of naturally how I communicate, is like kind of being like rude, I guess, to some extent, but like joking. And like being around like those guys, like the ones that can take it, they've been doing it a long time, like, and you get like a good riff at you and you're like, oh dude, that one was good, like, and then you fire back and they're like, oh, and like you're laughing about it. Like, that's the enjoyable part.
Well, there's the whole thing with like male camaraderie, you know.
It's like, you know, you're beating each other up, but you're like, no one's like filling the elbows, you know what I mean?
It's almost like it's like a masculine way kind of to be affectionate to a degree, I guess.
Like because I always tell people, like, if I'm not talking mess to you, I don't like you. Like, if I'm not like busting your chops and stuff and giving you a hard time, like, I don't like you. I don't want to be around you. Like, I want to be around people I can kind of cut up with, and like, let's not take everything so serious if it's not serious time. Like, let's enjoy ourselves, let's live our life. But I was gonna come back to bullying and kind of forgot where I was gonna go with that.
I can pick back up on that for you for a second. I was going to throw in a story as well, because we all have similar stories from that time frame. Like you were saying, Jake, we went to homeschool for a while, and I would say that because of that, we were kind of raised up religiously to a degree as well. That we were like sweet kids. We were naive. Like the way that we interacted with each other, we were just like nicer kids at that time. And then, like you said, we moved to that new place, and then we were going to schools where rich people went, but we were not rich. And so the way that we talked, the way that we dressed, you know, our haircuts, everything, excuse me, it wasn't the same as them, you know. And to them it was considered lesser. And I remember on my first day back out of homeschool, and I was going to public school. It was second grade. It was the beginning of the semester in January, and I was only on the bus for maybe 2 minutes, and I was already punched in the face, you know. And it was a complete shock to me, because, you know, like the night before we're watching cartoons and eating pizza or whatever, and then I just wake up in this whole new world. I've never even been to this public school. The last time I went to public school was kindergarten, and just because I was like quiet and shy, or I was nervous, I just got punched in the face by the kid sitting next to me, you know. And then that started kind of that mentality of figuring out that you need, or you think you need, a mean streak to survive. It didn't necessarily happen in that moment, but as the years went by, and then by the time I got into 8th grade, the bullying for me had kind of gotten out of control, like people pushing me into lockers and things like that. And you know, that's naturally what happens, is you kind of snap and you fight back. And so I ended up I really didn't have a problem with this kid, but I just snapped, and for whatever reason I just started punching him. Thank God I didn't really cause any significant damage. You know, I was young, so I wasn't powerful by any means. But he was okay, and then I got suspended, you know, and I was obviously the aggressor and the fool in that situation. But it did offer me a bit of protection after that. It wasn't that people thought I was tough. It was just the risk that I would fight back. You know, that's all it was.
That's what I would do on that same concept, is I would fight people, and I knew that I could take 90% of the people, and it was usually the people that I knew I could take that would want to step up, and it's like I would just start throwing hands or whatever, and then people automatically build that fear, like, hey, like he's down to fight, and like he can fight pretty good, you know.
You know something that, like there's a guy I follow on the internet. He says something every once in a while that really. I have a question for you guys after this, but he usually says public school is one of the only places where children will experience violence in their entire lives.
Exactly. Yeah, that's
And
wise. Yeah.
So, looking back on that, I believe that's 100% true. But I do have a question for you guys. So, what do you guys think about the whole argument about homeschooling and socialization? You know what I'm talking about? Like,
Yes.
people often say, they're like, hey, you know, if these kids go to homeschool, they won't be socialized and won't be able to deal with people and all that. I have thoughts on it, which I'll tell you in a minute, but I was just curious, like, what you guys think about that.
I think that to a degree it can have a bit of a negative effect socially. And the only reason that I say that is once they go to the workforce, or if they decide to go to a college that's not online per se, they have a better in-person knowledge of how people are, different cultures, behavior patterns, and things like that. But on the flip side, I like homeschool because you can teach them what they actually need to know to succeed. They can be surrounded by love and, and comfort and things like that. To me, the only drawback is potentially it could hamper some social skills, or even just be a bit more naive. It's kind of like, it's one of those things where it's like give or take on which is the best option. But if someone told me that they were homeschooling their children, I would absolutely support that and understand why, especially in today's America, or just today's world in general. That's pretty much my thoughts on it.
Yeah, I think homeschooling now is different than whenever we were kids too. Is like you can go to the Humane Society. Like there's all kinds of programs now for homeschool kids, like where they do like,
it's a lot more built out.
Yeah, like where homeschool kids can get in groups and go do like field trips together, so they do socialize, and they can have a chess club and stuff. And like, because like the homeschools, like there's a couple big ones, and like the kids in your area, like we had looked into it, and they had like zoo trips for the kids and all kinds of stuff, a walking graduation. So I feel like it's a lot more sociable now, and if you do go in those programs, like it will help the kids, I feel like, better than public school. Volunteering places, like if you're in the national forest, cleaning the trails, helping with them clean up before the control burns, and going to like the animal shelter and stuff like that, nursing homes, like you're getting real life experience dealing with people and things of all types of needs, versus like you go to school and it's set up like a workplace. You go there, you go to school, you go to lunch, you go to school again, then you go home. You know what I mean? It's basically like they're training you for work, but they're not training you for life.
Right.
And it's so there's benefits in both, right? No less violence probably in homeschool, unless there's violence in the home, and more people in the school, but also you can control who your children socialize with and the socializing they're doing with homeschool.
Yeah.
So I think it's like it's a mix, like, because if you find a good public school, like where we're at is pretty decent. I like it. It's super diverse. And it's one of the main reasons I like living where we're living, is because it's so diverse, and I don't want my kids to know anything but diversity, that we can all live in one world together in peace. And the school's really good. They have good programs for my son with special needs, and and to me that's the most important thing, is I can't teach him what they're teaching him. I don't have those skill sets.
Right, they've gone to school for it and everything.
Yeah, like, so they're teaching him like life skill sets that I'm not good at teaching him that, but I can still teach him how to work on cars, or do electrician work, or whatever, build a fence, whatever it is. I can teach him life skills, and they can teach him a different set of life skills, like communication. Like, the doctor told us, he may not talk much, and y'all know my big guy, he's a talker now. So
yeah, we just saw him 2 nights ago. Yeah, he was talking very well.
And I feel like the school's the big part of that, with autism and being on the spectrum, is getting them the help as soon as you can get it, and admitting that your child has something. I think that held me back for a long time. I didn't want to admit that he had autism, or he was on the spectrum, or whatever they call it, right? And he's my innocent little boy, but I said, it's kind of like a come to life moment, like, hey, I'm hurting him because of what I think, and I'm wrong, so like, let's fix this. And as soon as we did, we started while he was still young, and he's made huge progressions, and I have no doubt that one day he'll be able to live on his own in life, or live with Jonas, and like, he'll be a positive contributing member of society.
Yeah, well, I mean, though, yeah, I've seen his progress rapidly in the last 2 to 3 years, especially. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just skyrocketed. Absolutely.
And that's something I noticed with the new generation is there's a lot of like special needs children compared to where we were as kids, and that's like a big generation change. And I find the kids at the school are actually like really nice to my son and the teachers, and he's loved by all really because he's such a sweet kid. Like no one picks on him because, I mean, he is like a foot taller than everybody in his class. He's a big boy, right? So, but he's just as sweet as he can be, man. And it's like in the public school, I feel like he still has his innocence there, but I feel like if he loses it, I might look into a charter school, a private school, or I don't think I can do homeschooling just because of our work schedule, and I don't want to take away not giving him the best.
Right.
That makes total sense. I think that scenario is interesting. I mean, because that's certainly a scenario where having extra help is good because I mean that's different circumstances. I think for sure.
Yeah. Everyone has their own scenario where like we tried moving out to East Texas to be closer to like you and mom and stuff, and the part we picked was like a cool little town, but the school wasn't great for children with special needs. It was great for kids that were like excelling academically in math and stuff like that. It's a great school for that, but their special need program, because there's really not a whole lot of special needs out here, is kind of just like non-existent as far as like the therapies offered. And so I found it in our best interest for our family to sell that property and move back to like the Houston area. And, it's kind of a blessing. He goes to the same elementary school I went to. And John, I'm not sure if you went there. I think, yeah. So it's pretty cool, man. Like to go back and like the same janitor guy that was there when I was there, he started, Mr. Jimmy.
Yeah,
thank you for your service. Yeah, he's
yes, sir.
He retired last year, I think, but he still goes up there and volunteers big time, man. It's cool, like to see him. I'm like, Mr. Jimmy, like he taught me how to fold the American flag and like to appreciate it and pride in our country. And respect, like him being a veteran, like I would get the chance to go out there and fold the flag with him and change the flag, and like he doesn't even know this, but that was like a big inspiration in my life, like in my pride for our country and the respect for our flag, and I just don't feel like kids get that kind of stuff from adults anymore. Like everyone's so tied up on their phone or the internet or whatever, it's like I see it like everywhere we go. Parents are just like glued to their phone, like, and their kids are like talking to them, and they're like, hey, and I'm guilty of it too sometimes. And it's like, hey, sometimes I just need to like eject from the phone and like be in the present. Like I have these blessings in front of me that I need to like visualize and take care of and spend time with, because there'll be time when I'm not here anymore, and I want their memories to be good. Like, oh, remember when we did this? Remember when we did that? And I think that's lately I've been fighting my fears, like with my anxiety and doing things I've never done before, so my kids can experience that. And I'm also like living through my fears and experiencing things that like, it makes me know life's like truly magical, man. And like, it comes back to like, I'm blessed to be where I am from where I was. And like, I have those tattoos on my leg, and I got one of them when I was 18, Jack Daniels. I don't drink anymore. And I got another one laying on a pool table drunk doing drugs. One of my buddies, and people were like, aren't you gonna get those removed? And I was like, I really thought about it, and I'm gonna keep them there so I know where I was and where I want to go. Like that's a reminder of my past.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they're not evil tattoos or anything, but it's like if I look at those, it's like I remember when I got those, I remember what I was doing, and I look at where I'm at, I'm like, I feel the pride. Like, my wife turned my life around with sobriety. Like after I got sober, I met her, and like that was the steady rock that I needed, was consistency. Someone to tell me that they cared about me. Like,
absolutely.
Like someone outside my family to tell me that I'm needed.
Yeah, I can say the same thing about my wife is once you get married and you're in love and you realize that person truly loves you, like you have that intense feeling of you can't let them down, and that feeling never goes away.
Yeah. And they've seen me at my worst, and I've seen them at their worst, and like we work through it, and it's like it's a commitment. There's a bond, like.
Yeah, just like you were talking about with monogamy. Yeah, like you have that one life partner that you go through life with, and you experience so many emotions. It's like it is a roller coaster for everybody to a degree, more so for some than others, but you learn so much about yourself, and that's something that hits me at least once a week, about that I'm progressing as a human being, as a man, because of my wife directly. She's like in Chinese philosophy, kind of like the yin and the yang, that's what it's, that bringing that perfect balance. You need a woman to balance you. I think that's true.
That's a whole another thing. I don't know if we'll get into it, but yeah, that's like a book you don't get. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
It's how it has how to do that. And yeah, I'm with you. Like being married, like has been the best thing that I've ever done. I mean, it has been, hills and valleys. I mean, it's been really, really great for a while now. But yeah, there's lots of learning. It's like, oh, okay, I need to do these things better, or start to see some of your own flaws. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When you have somebody that's just going to tell you they exist, you know what I mean? It's not easy, and that's not. It takes a little bit to mess with, and it's still an ongoing thing for sure. But
that's one of the biggest blessings is I think a woman to her husband, she may not even necessarily be doing it on purpose, but by saying certain things, they can dabble with those insecurities that you may not even be aware that you still have, but it's within her nature to expose those to yourself and to fix them. You know what I mean? Because you're like, she said that to me, why does it like sting? Why do I feel mad right now? And then when you calm down, you're like, she's right. And that goes both ways, I'm sure.
Yeah. I have those moments.
I still do to this day. I've been married for a long time now.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, we're at the point now where we can both admit when we're wrong, and I think that's helped our marriage big time. Is like, when I was wrong and you were right, and it's hard to eat that.
Oh, it is.
It's hard to eat your pride. You know what I mean? And I find happiness in that too. Is now like I 100% hold myself accountable. Like I think at some point I might run for city council, and I think my past will come up, and maybe this video, and for that, I'd just like to say that I'm not the same person that I used to be, and I took those life lessons and I learned from them in a positive aspect, and I'm a changed man. I'm a family man. Like, did y'all ever think I'd have kids and be taking my kids on vacations and all kinds of stuff? I never thought that, and now that it's happening, it's like I know I wasn't that person. That was like I would say a demon inside of me that needed to be released, and he's gone,
Exactly. We were living lives that weren't necessarily intended for us.
Yeah. We were just living. We weren't living our life.
Exactly.
We were just like a body in place, just a void.
I don't even feel like the same person. Like, well, I would say almost every 10 years it happens. It's like become a fundamentally different person. Like I don't even recognize the person like we described earlier, like the late teens.
My priorities have completely changed. Like I used to be like, oh, I got to be Ralph Lauren head to toe, clean haircut once a week, cologne, Giorgio Armani, like clean. I had probably 18 pairs of shoes, like 40 polo shirts, like 16 pairs of polo shorts, just polo socks, underwear, just as clean as I could be. And like my priorities now, like I'm wearing a Carhartt with some golf shorts from Walmart or Academy, wherever my girl got them, slides, and it's like if I need to be in a place where I need to present myself well, I do, but otherwise I just dress like Adam Sandler because I find happiness in that. Like I love wearing basketball shorts or shorts and a Carhartt with slides on, or Hey Dudes. I'm comfortable. I feel like that's myself. I'm not trying to impress anyone. I'm content with who I am, and then like being married, like it's like, who am I trying to impress? Like her, like, yeah, right. Like what's that gonna do? Like I come out with a suit, she's like, oh, you look handsome, and then like, that's the end of that, right? Like a little, oh yeah, I look good, thanks, honey. But you can get that same pleasure for bringing her breakfast in bed, and she's like, oh, you're so sweet. You ain't even got to buy the suit. So
my wife told me the other day, she's like, I don't even remember what we were talking about exactly, but we're having some silly conversation, and she was like, can you imagine having this conversation with anybody else? And I was like, no, I can't. I can't even kind of imagine it.
Because conversations with your spouse can like get weird, and like it's weird, but it's okay because you're both just like being yourselves, like 100% comfortable, and those are my favorite conversations. Like, oh yeah. Me and Chelsea, we have some like funny conversations, and like sometimes we'll talk to each other like we're bros. And like, just to keep it fun, like it doesn't have to be so serious all the time. I'm like, what's up, dude? And she's like, chill out, bro.
Yeah, that is one of the most beautiful parts of marriage.
Yeah, it's like I'm trying to have fun too and not be so serious. Like, let's enjoy it. Like, yeah, we're partners for life. Let's enjoy being partners for life instead of like fighting, making it work. And that's something else I find. I don't fight anything anymore. Like, I don't try and make things happen. Like, if I feel like it's not meant to happen, it's not going to happen. And I just kind of like, I just believe that someone's leading my way and it's not me, and I got to look for the signs, and I may not understand them at first or recognize them, but I figure them out like one way or another, and I just keep moving forward.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And to circle back around, we're probably going to have to close up pretty soon because it's starting to get dark out here. But I just wanted to ask you, Jake, as far as the homeschooling, I don't know if we ever really got your answer on that versus public schooling, and which one that you feel is the most beneficial, or which one you would prefer.
Oh yeah, well, I'm actually a huge fan of homeschool, and we haven't done it for various reasons. But partially is it's like I don't have the time with my job and everything to do it like in the way that I feel like it would need to be done. But I think I'm such a huge fan of it. And when it comes to the socialization question, I think that's what we were getting at. Like, you know, if someone's homeschooled, are they, you know, missing those fundamental socialization skills? And I've thought about this a lot, and I think every person I know that has had problems socially has gone to public school.
I agree with you 100%.
Like
I never thought about it like that. Yeah.
Statistically, like the problem we're describing is the status quo. You know what I mean? At any rate, I mean, I don't have a ton to say about it, but other than like, yeah, I think I'm a huge fan of it for the reasons that I don't think there's anything wrong with being innocent, with not being exposed to all that nonsense. Like, yes, it could be hard at times, but I think if you learn that from someone close to you, a family member, that like these types of things that exist, like you don't necessarily need to experience it. I mean, you know what I mean? You can,
right.
you know, you don't need to experience getting beat up to know that it can happen. You know what I mean?
Like, fun,
yeah. Well, like, I guess I'll close that one up. Is just like I said, when I got out of homeschool and went to public school, I felt like I was pretty innocent, but I was a good kid, and I was learning good. Like, you know, I will say, like, at least in my journey, I've learned more on my own than I ever have in college, in high school, any of that nonsense.
I agree with that totally.
The most important learning I've done in my life has been outside of that, which has led me to believe that it's entirely possible to do without some like public school structure. And that's not to say that that's great for everyone. You know, people need various things, but I think there is like a good number of people who would benefit from something that's a little more specialized, like for them, versus just going into the cattle farm, right, and getting pushed through the same as everybody else.
Right. No, I didn't think about it like that, and I absolutely agree with you. Yeah, you can learn those lessons, you know, from your father, your mother, an older brother, whatever, without having to experience that kind of like torment or bullying that all three of us experienced.
Yeah, like I know people in prison beat each other and kill each other. I don't need to experience it to know that it happened. You know what I'm saying? And like,
you're right.
You know, and you know, there is always the question. You have to learn lessons as you work with different kinds of people over, you know, through the course of your life, and you're going to run into difficult people and different cultures and things that will challenge you. I mean, but whether or not, I guess, to what degree you learn that in school, I don't know. I'm a little unconvinced, because probably the people that have the worst socialization, like I said, I think all went to public school, right? So I'm not convinced that it was a major contributing factor, you know, more so than maybe their genetics or just their personality or how they were raised. I think probably play a way bigger role than whether or not you went to some public school.
I agree, man.
Is just my thought on that.
Yeah.
Because like kids today, like they're not educated by any means. Like they can't speak well. They don't know anything. Like you see the interviews on Facebook, and they ask people how many states are in the United States, and they're like 30. And it's like, bro, like, you know, like that should be, like, I learned that in elementary school, like what the stripes and the stars and the colors and everything stands for. And it's like, what are you educating our children with now? It's like, you know, I look over the curriculum like that my kids get being in kindergarten and second grade, and like they're doing like the same kind of schoolwork I was and stuff, and like, you know, holiday stuff. They still do all the holidays, and they say the Pledge of Allegiance in the morning. And I think, you know, that's where the schools, maybe why this has made such a big change, is that they've taken so many things out of school that we once did, where we had pride in our country. Like, you know, we were proud to stand up and say the Pledge of Allegiance to the United States, or like in Texas, we have the Texas State Pledge. And like, you know, like we were raised like, hey, have pride in your country, love your country, be good to people. This is the land of opportunity and dreams, and, you know, anyone can do anything here. And that always stuck in my brain. Like, we're all equal. We can do whatever we want in America. Everyone has a fighting chance. And now you don't see that with our young generation. Like, it's like there's no pride in our country. Like, they badmouth our country, and they don't do anything to fix it, right? It's like,
Right.
if you're complaining and you're not doing anything to try and resolve those issues, you're just complaining. Like, when I go to our city council meetings and talk, I can go up there and complain, or I can offer solutions, or offer to volunteer, or offer money for the homeless problem, or whatever. I can offer and do that, which I do. Or there's other people that just go up there and complain and do nothing, and it's like, that's our new generation, is that they just complain about everything, and they just expect everything to be handed to them, and they don't want to work for anything.
Right.
And I think that's the biggest change from whenever we were kids to now, is everyone just expects everything for free. They don't want to do anything for it, and if things don't go their way, they cry until they get their way. It's like, but that's not the reality of life. At least not the life I want my kids to know.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, and I see that all the time in the younger generation, you know, from teenagers to in their 20s. It's that lack of work ethic, lack of just pride. And when I say pride, I don't mean that in an unhealthy fashion, but just, you know, being proud to be a hard worker, to show up to work on time, as we discussed earlier, you know, to have some level of tolerance and emotional intelligence while in the workplace. You know, don't cause problems. You don't necessarily have to compete with everyone around you. But just go above and beyond, just because, you know, and that life skill, developing that, it's gonna, you know, that's gonna help you all the way until you stop working.
Well, being goal driven, right, and having a goal, I think it's like, this is a whole nother conversation we probably another time, but I think having a goal is so important to people's happiness, like
Absolutely.
having something to strive for.
And if you can make those little goals, and you start getting to those little goals, and then you're proud of yourself because you've accomplished a goal, and you keep growing on those goals, and like, I'm with you on the goals. Like, that's how our debt,
Always have a goal, man.
like our debt,
Always.
it's like, okay, we pay off the lowest card first, and like, we're like, hey man, we paid that card off, awesome, and then another card's paid off, and another one, and then we put a bunch of money down on a car, and it's like, you know, help paying the note down. It's like, man, like, you know, like, it makes you happy, like you're meeting your goals, you're meeting your standard. And when I don't meet it, I'm like, you know what, that just means we gotta try harder next time. Instead of beating myself up, it's like, hey, we gotta buckle down.
Doesn't end here.
We're
Yeah.
not going out to eat twice this week. We're not going out to eat at all. We're skipping this week and next week. We're making up the money, and we're doing it. And it's like, you're pushing yourself softly while not beating yourself up. And it's like, you're pushing yourself to be a better person too at the same time while you're meeting your goal. And I think that's where happiness is if people that sit around and don't do anything, and they doom scroll, it makes you depressed and you don't even know it. And the next thing, you don't want to do anything. You just want to sit on your phone and look on Facebook or Twitter or whatever, and your whole day's over now.
Yeah.
Versus, like, if you would have went outside, like you're dreading redoing the flower bed, and you just went out there and did it, by the time you got done, you'd be like, man, babe, come look at this. Neighbor walks by, be like, hey, what do you think about the new flower bed? It looks good, right? Like, you're proud of it, right? You accomplished your goal.
Yeah.
And I feel like our society today, like our teenagers and our youth, they don't, goals aren't a thing. Like, for some, like, I know your kids have goals and stuff, and you've done a great job parenting. Like, your kids save money and stuff, and they have hobbies, and they do what they want, and they're great kids, and they're responsible and respectful. And then you see other kids their age where they're like foul-mouthed, nasty, being rude to everybody. You know, they don't know how to, like, what money is, or have any concept of money. And, you know, I think the internet is the poison of this generation.
Dude, I think the best way to pull yourself out of a slump is to start with goals. And it could be anything, dude. It could, I mean, I think like Jordan Peterson's talking, I mean, this is kind of a popular thing now, but dude, clean up your room.
Yeah, really.
Do the smallest thing that you can handle. Put up a few things. Just do something,
Yeah.
and you start to slowly regain control of your
yeah.
life. You know what I mean? And you can then push forward. And then as you keep slowly doing these things, next thing you know, a big thing has been accomplished. And
Yeah.
you know, that's so big,
Like,
dude.
stop avoiding that cup holder with spilt Coke and the straw in there, and just clean it up. Like, dude, it's gonna take 45 seconds, and like, everyone gets stuck like that, and then you have to get to the point of like, all right, I'm just doing it, right? And then once you start doing it, it's like, it's not even that bad. It's like, man, I BS for so long to like not do it. Now it's done, and I feel so much happier.
Yeah.
Like, you know, it was like when the garage got crushed during the hurricane, like, it was like really overwhelming and stuff. And then once I finally like got the equipment there, and I'm just rocking on the excavator and the skid steer, just, and I'm in my zone jamming Hank Jr., you know, just like getting after it. Dude, I looked at it, I was like, dude, I'm so proud of myself. Like, I did this. Like, you know, it makes you feel good when you accomplish your goal.
Yeah.
And like halfway through, I'm like, man, I'm kind of regretting not like paying somebody, right? And I'm like, nah, dude, we're sticking through. Hank number 2, like, you know, back on the machine, hydrate, you know, take a break, play with the kids for a little bit, get them in there. get them excited about it, and then hop back in and just, and I completed my goal. And you're right. I think that's my biggest part of finding happiness is completing my goals.
Yeah.
Like
Absolutely.
for my family, like, because I do it all for them.
Yeah, I mean, it creates a constant state of purpose, right?
Yeah.
Like, I need to do this, and I can do this, and then that's what, I think that's where people start getting depressed. They're like, man, everything is just, I've lost control of the situation, and that's, you can just start doing small things to start reclaiming control of your life, and
Absolutely.
make yourself happy.
I think we could probably do a 4-hour podcast just talking about goals, all three of us, because as y'all were talking, my mind was going all over the place, because I've had those hundreds of specific circumstances where I needed to have a goal to go in a positive direction, but I wasn't doing it at that time,
Yep.
But yeah, let's wrap up with that. I can see on the camera, like, it's getting so dark, we can barely see ourselves. But yeah, thanks for doing this with me, guys. My brother here, Jake, and my brother Josh here, I love you both. Thanks for doing this, and hopefully we can do another podcast. I know it's hard for us to get together sometimes, family stuff, we have distances where we live apart, but I would like it if in the next 4 to 6 weeks we could continue this discussion and talk about our goals and things like that. So hopefully we can work that out. But yeah, thanks again, guys. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, everybody, for watching, and inshallah I will be back soon. We will go back to the Islamic studies, and then hopefully within, like I said, the next 4 to 6 weeks I can do another podcast with my brothers. This was extremely enjoyable, so thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys soon.
Cool. Take care.